Well, I think there is no way that you can avoid this competition, and it will, the international community will watch very carefully how the KRG manage such a complicated issue like that, because it is one of the defining issues for the, not only for the KRG, but also for regional stability. Now let me look back. There are two parameters. The first one is, you all remember the experience between the KRG, before the KRG was created, between Turkey and Iran, when it actually have put some kind of, I don't want to call it a demarcation line, but there were clear zones of influence. Now the risk now is how you can reduce this influence by at the same time being, I don't want to say dependent, but you need good relations to both of them. And I think until now, all political parties in the KRG regions have done a very good job, which is not based on what would be a dream, but on realities on the ground. It is natural that when you, have a close border to Turkey, you have to have good economic relations with Turkey, and when you have a close border to Iran, you have to have good economic relations with Iran. This, the Kurdish parties already managed. They also managed things on the security level, from crimes to smuggling and so on. These are already proofs that there's a maturity in the state system and in an understanding of international relations. Now, there's one big problem, and that relates directly to central Iraq, and that is now the thorny question of how much in a situation where the zones of interest between Iran and Turkey clash in Kurdistan, and this is what we see around Mosul, can be solved. And I think that all parties in the KRG have taken smart decisions by avoiding to be too outspoken. You have your pressing interest, but it's the art of diplomacy to avoid. And as we will see it, the Turkish obsession with Tel Afar, but at the same time Turkey has its troops in Bashika. So it has to do with Mosul. And I think that Iran understands that there will be a Shia domination of Mosul, will be whatever Iran's actual role is, it will backfire to Tehran. Whereas Turkey will understand, hopefully, we are now not so sure any longer, but hopefully, that there are certain military limits Turkey really can actually do. And that Mosul is a responsibility, a common responsibility, and fighting Daesh is a common responsibility. So I think the kind of silent diplomacy and at the same time to be steadfast as it is now is actually the right thing KRG government could have done. There was no other possibilities in my view, but at the same time it also opens, it also doesn't close doors, and it makes one point sure. Today it is still that Iran and Turkey are still very influential, but compare this to 20 years ago where they actually could dictate terms. These days are gone, and that's important. And for this phase right now, this momentum that nobody can, negotiating is something else, but dictating is over. This is the ultimate moment. And I think this rivalry, Iran and Turkey, shows very well that the times of the dictate to the Kurds are over. I think this is a very important part. I think this is now a very important question, because traditionally Iran had a three-pronged approach to Iraq. There were special relations with the Kurds because of the security situation in the 1990s and so on. There were special relations to Najaf and Karbala. How couldn't it be? It's the center of Shiaism. And there are, of course, tensions. It's, if we go to Basra, we would see, yes, the Iranians are there, but they are by far not dictating terms on their own. We have other political actors, Shiite political actors, who set limits. And then there's the ordinary diplomatic relations to Baghdad. Now, the more influential Iran gets in a certain part of the country, the more it inherits its problems. So Tehran now is not in a position as, say, in imperial times. In imperial times, They could lay back and then decide whether they support and then sign with the Kurds and then sign with the Iraqi government and so on. These days are gone because now Iran has vested interests there, not only pilgrims, but also businesses. But also, the longer Iran is so influential in Iraq, the sooner they have to decide in the disputed territories on which side they are on. Now, the Americans couldn't solve it, who had a much bigger presence there. For whatever reasons, they couldn't solve it. The Iraqis couldn't solve Kirkuk and the disputed areas until now. Why the Iranians? But it has dramatic consequences for Iran, because in Khuzestan you have Arabs who automatically would side emotionally with Arabs, with Shiite Arabs, and in Kurdistan and in Loristan and in Azerbaijan-e-Gharbi and in Khorasan you have Kurds who automatically, for the better or worse, would side with the Kurds. So what Iran's influence is now producing for themselves is a risk of backfiring on their own domestic politics. Because sometimes people, when they are unhappy or frustrated, they don't take a core issue from Iran, but they take an issue from outside, like Kirkuk. And we saw it when Jalal Talabani was elected president to Iraq, how the outburst of happiness in Iranian Kurdistan. We saw it in Kobane, when a demonstration out of a sudden were in Tehran. I mean, neither the PKK is very popular or prominent in Tehran, nor did anybody have any relation to Kobane, but it was enough. So, and now come Kirkuk, now come the disputed areas. This is something the Iranians have to be very careful. I think many in Tehran have realized that already. But they are facing a difficult choice. On one hand, under the umbrella of fighting Daesh, they have to keep their presence strong. And they want to have a say in what is ongoing with the Shiites, at least. And there are legitimate and less legitimate reasons for being so involved. On the other hand, it means also you're importing a problem into a new phase of Iran, but a whole generation of decision makers will step down and the old models don't work. So this will be a very big challenge. And it's often not so good to be in a partnership, the strong, the bully, because even when nations get weak, they still know how to preserve their dignity. It's not discussed publicly. It's not discussed publicly, but it is in expert circles and it is in security circles very hotly debated. And this is, I would say, a very, very big problem because they face a dilemma they can't solve easily. It also mirrors, don't let us forget, there is a debate in Iran about giving more competences to the provinces, including language instruction and so on. So the debates they do behind closed doors about Kirkuk and whom and what to support is a mirror image of their own debate about centralism and decentralization, which they couldn't solve. So in the end, even if we don't know the details of what they're talking, we can fairly assume that they come to no conclusion, which is the worst thing in strategy you can have.